That envelope doesn't make you important, Lieutenant. Commander Travis Cole said it loud enough for the entire war room to hear, and for half a second, the rain against the reinforced glass seemed to stop with him. Lieutenant Commander Hannah Walker stood just inside the steel door, her uniform still damp at the shoulders from the storm outside, one hand wrapped around a sealed gray envelope marked with red wax and a black Navy command stamp. She did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked across the long table at the men who had already decided she was in the wrong room. The underground briefing chamber beneath Naval Station Norfolk hummed with radar screens, satellite feeds, and the low, nervous chatter of officers who had been awake since 0300. 6 Navy personnel were missing somewhere in the Mediterranean, and the last encrypted signal from their team had gone dark 42 minutes earlier. Coffee cups sat untouched beside mission folders. Blue light washed over the walls. Every face in the room carried the same hard expression, the kind men wore when fear had been dressed up as focus. Hannah walked forward, measured and quiet, her boots making almost no sound on the polished floor. She was 5'7", with light brown hair pinned tight at the back of her head and gray-blue eyes that missed very little. On the left side of her chest sat a small silver badge, shaped like a white wolf gripping an anchor in its teeth. It was not standard issue. It was not listed on the room's recognition chart. To most of the officers watching her, it looked like a personal decoration, maybe sentimental, maybe decorative, maybe another reason not to take her seriously. Commander Cole leaned back in his chair, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, decorated, and certain of himself. He had survived 2 decades in special operations by trusting his instincts, and every instinct he had told him that this young woman with a sealed envelope and calm eyes was an interruption. "We're in the middle of a live recovery crisis," he said. "Unless you're here to deliver coffee, hand that packet to the duty officer and wait outside." A few men lowered their eyes to hide their smiles. One lieutenant at the far end let out a short laugh before turning it into a cough. Hannah stopped at the center of the table and placed the envelope on the glass surface with careful precision. The red seal caught the light like a warning no one wanted to read. "You may want to open it before you keep talking, Commander," she said. Her voice was even, almost soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. Cole's smile faded by a fraction. "I don't take operational advice from couriers." Hannah's gaze moved once to the main screen, where the final location of the missing team blinked in red over a black stretch of sea. For the first time, something behind her eyes shifted, not fear, not anger, but recognition. She knew that grid. She knew the water depth, the coastline, the timing of the patrol routes. She knew what the room had not figured out yet. Then she looked back at Cole and said, "The dangerous part already happened. You're just late to the briefing." Silence fell unevenly, first at the far end of the table, then around the screens, then beside the communications desk where an older chief petty officer had finally noticed the badge on her chest. His face changed so quickly it looked like the color had been pulled from it. He straightened slowly, as if some memory had reached through the years and taken hold of his spine. Cole did not see him. He only saw Hannah, the envelope, and what he believed was arrogance standing in a uniform too quiet to command the room. Outside, thunder rolled over the base. Inside, Hannah Walker waited while the men around the table laughed at the only thing in the room that could still bring their people home. Hannah did not move, while Commander Cole studied her, as if she were a problem that could be solved by impatience. Around them, the war room returned to a cautious kind of noise. Keyboards clicked. Radios murmured. A printer pushed out another intelligence update near the back wall. No one wanted to admit that the young officer standing beside the table had changed the temperature of the room without raising her voice. The envelope remained between them, sealed, untouched, and heavier than paper had any right to be. Hannah kept her hands behind her back, shoulders squared, chin level, breathing steady. She had entered alone because that was how the order had come. No escort, no announcement, no ceremony. She had been flown in under storm cover on a transport aircraft that landed without runway lights, handed the envelope by an admiral who had said only one thing before stepping away. "Deliver it yourself." That was all. Now she stood beneath the cold blue glow of the screens, surrounded by officers who mistook quiet for uncertainty. Her uniform was plain except for the silver wolf and anchor badge pinned above her left pocket. The badge had been polished, but not restored. Tiny scratches crossed its surface, each one earned in places no report would ever name. She had worn it through freezing surf, desert wind, and hospital corridors where names were whispered because saying them too loudly made loss feel permanent. To the men at the table, it was just metal. To Hannah, it was the only public thing left from a team the Navy had officially buried 3 years earlier. Commander Cole tapped 2 fingers against the glass. "Lieutenant Commander Walker, is it?" he asked, glancing at the name tape on her uniform as though it had only just become relevant. "You understand this room is operating under restricted command authority." "I do," Hannah said. "Then you understand why walking in with a sealed packet does not place you inside the chain of command." "I understand the chain of command better than you think." A young operations officer looked up from his tablet. He was maybe 26, with fresh confidence and tired eyes. "Ma'am, with respect, this is a special operations recovery brief. Administrative delivery should go through the outer office." Cole gave a faint nod, as if the younger man had said what everyone else was thinking. Hannah turned her gaze to him, not sharply, not unkindly, just enough to make him sit a little straighter. "What is your name?" "Lieutenant Andrew Price, ma'am." "Lieutenant Price, when the last signal came in, did it include a wind correction?" He blinked. "A wind correction?" "Yes." He glanced toward the communication station. "No, ma'am. Just coordinates and a partial authentication burst." Hannah looked back to the red blinking point on the screen. Then it was not their last signal. That stopped the room more effectively than an order. Cole leaned forward. "Explain." Hannah lowered her eyes to the envelope. "Open it." He did not. Pride held his hand in place. Across the room, the older chief petty officer still stood half a step back from his console, staring at the badge on Hannah's chest with the look of a man trying to decide whether he was seeing a ghost or a warning. His name was Chief Daniel Mercer, and 21 years in the Navy had taught him not to speak unless silence became dangerous. At that moment, silence was becoming dangerous. "Commander," Mercer said quietly. Cole turned, irritated. "Not now, Chief." Mercer swallowed once, eyes still fixed on Hannah. "Sir, you should open the envelope." The room shifted again. Hannah said nothing. Outside, the rain struck harder against the concrete ventilation shafts above them. Inside, the sealed packet waited on the table like a truth everyone had been trained to ignore. Cole looked at Chief Mercer with the kind of controlled annoyance that came from years of being obeyed quickly. "You know something about this, Chief?" he asked. Mercer did not answer at once. His eyes stayed on the silver badge pinned to Hannah Walker's uniform, the wolf and anchor catching the screen light each time the radar map refreshed. "I know enough to tell you that packet did not come through normal channels," Mercer said. "And neither did she." A few officers exchanged glances. Lieutenant Price lowered his tablet. Someone near the communications desk stopped typing. The war room had spent the last hour drowning in data, but now every person inside it was listening to a silence built around one woman and one envelope. Cole turned back to Hannah. "Is that supposed to impress me?" Hannah's expression did not change. "No." "Then maybe you can explain why my chief suddenly looks like he has seen classified history walk through the door." "That is not my explanation to give." Cole gave a short, humorless laugh and picked up the envelope at last. He held it between 2 fingers, as if making it clear that he still considered it beneath the room's urgency. "You are asking a lot of trust from people who do not know you." Hannah looked toward the main screen again. The red marker blinked in the same place, patient and accusing. "The people out there know me." That answer landed harder than she intended. Cole's face tightened, but before he could respond, Major Alan Reeves from Intelligence leaned back in his chair and said, "With respect, ma'am, every name on that missing team has been verified through Naval Special Warfare. None of them have you listed as prior command, training officer, or support liaison." Hannah turned slightly toward him. "That is because you are reading the file that was allowed to survive." Reeves looked offended, but uncertain. "Files do not just disappear." Chief Mercer gave him a slow look. "Yes, they do." Rainwater traced dark lines down the high exterior windows above the reinforced wall. Somewhere overhead, thunder rolled across Norfolk like heavy equipment crossing steel decking. The sound made one of the hanging lights flicker. Hannah remained still. She knew how rooms like this worked. Men with rank did not always fear being wrong. They feared being wrong in front of each other. So she gave them space to make the choice themselves. Cole turned the envelope over. The wax seal bore the black trident of Navy Command and a thin white slash through the center, almost invisible unless the light touched it correctly. His thumb paused over it. This better not be a personnel transfer. It is not. A logistics update. No. A recommendation from someone in Washington who has never set foot outside an office. Hannah met his eyes. No. He stared at her for a moment longer, then smiled faintly, trying one last time to own the room before the paper could. All right, Lieutenant Commander. Let us see what kind of magic they sent in a rainstorm. A low chuckle moved from one side of the table to the other. Not loud. Not open. Just enough to remind Hannah that they still thought she was standing on borrowed authority. She had heard that sound before in training yards, hangars, hospital corridors, and command tents. It was the sound people made when they believed dignity could be measured by volume. Hannah did not look at them. She watched Cole's hand. Behind her, Chief Mercer slowly removed his cap and held it against his chest. The gesture was small, but in a Navy room, small gestures carried weight. Cole noticed too late. His thumb pressed against the wax. The seal cracked with a dry sound that seemed too sharp for something so small. Every screen kept blinking. Every radio kept breathing static. But no one spoke as Commander Travis Cole opened the envelope and pulled out the names inside. Cole unfolded the first sheet slowly, still wearing the expression of a man prepared to be disappointed. The paper was thick, cream-colored, and stamped across the top with a classification code that made Lieutenant Price sit forward before he realized he had moved. There were only 7 names on the page. No paragraph of explanation. No briefing summary. No polite cover letter from Washington. Just names, ranks, call signs, and a short column of operational notes written in the clipped language of people who did not waste ink. Cole read the first line, and the room watched his face. For 1 second, nothing changed. Then his eyes moved to the second line, the third, the fourth, and something in his jaw went still. Major Reeves leaned toward him. Commander? Cole did not answer. He turned the sheet slightly, as if the angle of the light might change what it said. Hannah remained on the other side of the table, quiet, hands still behind her back. She knew the order of those names because she had written the original recovery report herself 3 years earlier in a windowless medical wing outside Ramstein. Her right hand wrapped in gauze, her voice nearly gone from smoke, salt air, and 3 days without sleep. The Navy had taken that report, sealed it, buried it, and left only rumors behind. Now the rumors were unfolding in Cole's hands. This is outdated, Cole said finally, though his voice had lost some of its edge. Some of these references are from a closed operation. Chief Mercer's eyes lowered. Not closed, sir. Hidden. Cole shot him a look, but Mercer did not back down. Major Reeves reached for the page. Cole held it away from him. That small motion told the room more than his words did. Whatever was on the page had become too important to pass around casually. Read it out, Hannah said. Cole looked up. Excuse me. If the room was comfortable laughing before it was opened, the room can hear what is inside. The words were calm, but they carried weight. No anger. No performance. Just a standard being placed where arrogance had stood. A young communications specialist near the sidewall stopped with one hand over his headset. The red marker on the main screen blinked again over the dark map of the Mediterranean. 47 minutes since the last confirmed signal. Every minute mattered. Still, no one moved. Cole looked back at the page. Lieutenant Commander Hannah Walker. He read, each word pulled from him with visible resistance. Operational authority, full command override. A chair creaked. Someone exhaled sharply. Price looked from the paper to Hannah, as if seeing her uniform for the first time. Cole continued, quieter now. Attached designation, White Wolf lead. Recovery priority, active. Historical clearance, restricted to flag level and above. Major Reeves whispered. That designation was never confirmed. Chief Mercer answered without looking at him. It was confirmed by the people who came home. Hannah's eyes stayed on the screen. She did not enjoy the room turning. She did not need their embarrassment. The 6 people on that map were not symbols, not leverage, not a way to correct a proud man in public. They were names she remembered without paper. Cole lowered the page just enough to look at her over it. Why are my missing operators listed beneath your authority? He asked. Hannah's answer came without hesitation. Because they were mine before they were yours. The words settled into the room with a force louder than thunder. Cole's face hardened, not from confidence now, but from the first impact of understanding. He turned to the next sheet and found the same 6 names again, this time with notes beside them. Dates, extraction records, medical transfers, debrief codes. Every line tied back to Walker. Every line made the laughter from 2 minutes earlier feel smaller, thinner, and impossible to defend. Then Cole saw the final entry at the bottom of the page. His own name. For the first time since Hannah had entered the room, Commander Travis Cole had nothing ready to say. Cole stared at his own name at the bottom of the page longer than anyone expected. The entry was only 1 line, but it carried enough weight to change how every officer in the room looked at him. Commander Travis Cole, temporary theater lead, subject to operational removal if mission integrity is compromised. No one said it aloud after him. No one had to. The sentence had already moved through the room like a cold current. Cole set the page down with careful control, as if any sharper movement might reveal what it had done to him. Who authorized this? He asked. Hannah answered without looking away from the map. Admiral James Whitaker. Major Reeves went still. Price looked down at his tablet, then back up again, suddenly aware that the normal chain of command had been cut cleanly above all of them. Cole gave a small nod, though it was not agreement. It was the motion of a man trying to keep his pride standing while the floor shifted beneath it. Admiral Whitaker is not in this room. No, Hannah said, but his authority is. The older chief petty officer took 1 step closer to the table. Commander, with respect, Admiral Whitaker does not use full command override unless the situation is already beyond standard recovery. Cole's eyes flicked to him. I know what the authority means, Chief. Mercer held his gaze for 1 second, then nodded. Then you know what she means. That quiet sentence landed harder than a reprimand. Hannah finally turned from the screen and looked at Cole directly. There was no triumph in her expression, no satisfaction. She had not come here to win an argument. Winning arguments was easy. Bringing people home was harder. The team did not stop transmitting, she said. They changed language. Price frowned. The burst was incomplete. It was complete for someone who knew what to listen for. She walked to the communications console, and the specialist sitting there moved aside before anyone told him to. Hannah leaned over the playback controls and brought up the last 12 seconds of audio. Static filled the speakers, thin and broken, followed by 3 short clicks, a pause, then 2 more. Reeves shook his head. That is interference. No, Hannah said. That is a tide count. She tapped the screen twice, freezing the signal pattern. 3, pause, 2. Low water in 3 hours, 2 minutes. They are telling us they can move when the inlet drops. Cole stepped closer despite himself. How would you know that? Hannah did not answer immediately. Her eyes rested on the dark coastline displayed beside the coordinates. Because I taught them to use it when words were not safe. The room seemed to shrink around that sentence. All the advanced systems, all the live feeds, all the rank on every shoulder suddenly felt less important than one woman remembering a lesson from a place no one else in the room had survived. She pointed to a narrow channel on the map, barely visible between 2 darker ridges along the coast. Your recovery plan is built around the harbor road. That road will be watched, blocked, and useless by the time your aircraft arrive. They will not be there. Cole's voice came lower now. Where will they be? Hannah enlarged the image with 2 fingers. Here, an old maintenance inlet, 12 feet wide at low tide, covered by collapsed concrete from an abandoned marina. It does not appear on current navigation charts because it was marked unusable after a storm season 10 years ago. Reeves glanced at his files. There is nothing in our database. Chief Mercer spoke softly. That is becoming a theme. No one laughed this time. Hannah looked at the clock. We have 2 hours and 56 minutes before that inlet closes again. After that, we lose the only quiet route in or out. Cole looked at the map, then at the papers, then at Hannah. His pride was still there, but it no longer had the room to stand alone. The envelope had not made her important. It had only forced them to notice that she already was. For the first time since Hannah Walker had entered the war room, Commander Travis Cole did not speak first. He stood beside the main screen with the open papers in his hand, watching the narrow inlet Hannah had marked in pale blue. The room waited on him, but the waiting felt different now. Earlier, they had waited for him to dismiss her. Now they waited to see if he was disciplined enough to follow the truth when it came from someone he had underestimated. Hannah glanced at the clock above the communications wall. 2 hours and 52 minutes. We need a quiet insertion, she said. No large aircraft over the coast. No visible convoy. No radio chatter after the first checkpoint. If they're using the inlet, they will be listening for us before they look for us. Major Reeves frowned at the satellite image. The water depth there is less than 4 feet at low tide. 3 feet, 8 inches, Hannah said. Enough for the right boat, not enough for the wrong plan. Lieutenant Price typed quickly, pulling up a tide table from the regional database. His eyes widened when the numbers matched her estimate within inches. He did not look at her with doubt anymore. He looked at her like a man trying to keep up. Ma'am, the inlet window opens in 1 hour and 14 minutes, he said. Full access for approximately 29 minutes. Then we stage in 40. Cole turned. You are assuming the missing team is mobile. Hannah shook her head once. I am assuming they are disciplined. That answer quieted the room again, but not with shock this time. With respect. Chief Mercer moved to the side cabinet and pulled out an older coastal chart stored in a hard plastic tube. He spread it beside the modern digital display. The paper was faded at the corners, marked with pencil notes from sailors who had worked those waters before satellites made everyone think memory was obsolete. Hannah leaned over it, found the inlet without searching, and placed one finger on a thin hand-drawn mark near the shoreline. There, she said. That is where they will wait. Mercer studied the mark, then looked at her badge again. White Wolf used that route. Hannah's hand paused on the chart, only for a heartbeat. Once. No one asked what had happened. Her face told them enough to leave the past alone. Cole noticed the restraint in the room, and something in him shifted. Until that moment, he had seen the papers as an order. Now he was beginning to understand they were also a warning, not against him alone, but against the easy arrogance of rooms that valued volume over experience. He set the sheet with his name on it flat against the table. Lieutenant Commander Walker, he said, and this time the rank sounded different in his mouth. What do you need? Hannah looked at him for one clean second. No victory, no smile, just command settling where it had always belonged. 2 small boats with low engine noise. 1 medical team, staged offshore. 1 drone above cloud cover, passive only. I want Price on communications, Mercer on signal verification, Reeves on satellite delay correction, and you beside me until we recover them. Cole absorbed the last part. Beside you. Yes. Not removed. Not unless you compromise the mission. The honesty of it stripped away the last theater from the room. Cole gave a slow nod. Understood. Hannah turned back to the map. Good. Then stop defending your chair and help me bring your people home. No one laughed. No one looked away. Across the room, officers who had mocked a sealed envelope minutes earlier began moving with purpose. Orders passed cleanly from station to station. Screens changed. Routes were redrawn. A recovery plan built on pride was dismantled and replaced by one built on knowledge. Hannah stood at the center of it all, calm as rain, quiet as steel, the small white wolf on her chest catching the light each time she moved. 40 minutes later, the war room no longer looked like a room waiting for permission. It looked like a machine finally given the right coordinates. Voices were lower now, faster, cleaner. Lieutenant Price managed the signal board with both hands moving across the controls, replaying the strange 3-click, 2-click pattern until it no longer sounded like static to anyone. Major Reeves had stopped arguing with the old maps and started correcting the satellite delay exactly where Hannah had told him to look. Chief Mercer stood near the communications console, one hand pressed to his headset, his eyes fixed on the dark strip of coastline that had become the center of every decision in the room. Commander Cole remained beside Hannah at the head of the table, no longer leaning back, no longer performing certainty. He watched her work. That was the difference. Earlier, he had looked at her. Now he watched her. Hannah marked the recovery route with a grease pencil over a transparent overlay. Boat 1 stays outside the inlet until the tide reaches 3 feet, 8 inches. Boat 2 holds 200 yards south. Engines low, lights off, no active radio unless I authorize it. Price glanced up. And if the team does not appear in the window? Hannah did not hesitate. They will. It was not hope. It was knowledge. Cole heard the difference, and for the first time, he did not challenge it. A line opened from the offshore staging vessel, the speaker crackling with wind and rain over open water. Norfolk, this is Harbor Nest. Small craft ready. Medical team standing by, awaiting final route confirmation. Every eye moved to Hannah. She leaned toward the microphone. Harbor Nest, this is Walker. Proceed to marker 7. Hold outside the wash until tide drop confirmation. No spotlight. No loud hailers. You are looking for 6 shadows, not 6 signals. There was a brief pause on the line. Then the reply came back, quieter than before. Copy that, Walker. 6 shadows. Chief Mercer closed his eyes for half a second. He had heard that phrase before. Not in a manual. Not in a classroom. From sailors who came back changed, carrying gratitude they did not know how to explain. Cole noticed. Chief, he said softly, you know that call language. Mercer opened his eyes. I know the people who used it. Hannah kept working, but the pencil slowed in her hand. Mercer continued, careful now. 3 years ago, a team was written off after a storm cut their extraction route. Officially, no one was close enough to reach them. Unofficially, someone went in anyway. The room went still around him. Cole looked at Hannah. She did not look back. Mercer's voice dropped. They said a woman with a white wolf badge found them in water so cold the radios failed. She got them to a maintenance inlet no one knew existed. She made them count tides instead of minutes because minutes could panic a man, but tides gave him a job. Hannah set the pencil down. Chief. Mercer stopped at once. Not because he was afraid of her, but because he respected the boundary in her voice. Cole looked at the opened envelope, then at the 6 missing names glowing on the screen. The notes made sense now. Previously extracted by Walker. Not a phrase. Not a credential. A debt. Price's voice cut through the silence. Signal change. Everyone turned. He boosted the audio, and the speakers filled with a faint repeating pattern beneath the static. 2 clicks. Pause. 2 clicks. Pause. 1 click. Hannah moved before anyone asked. They are early, she said. Why? Reeves asked. Because the inlet is draining faster than the table predicted. Cole checked the tide data. That gives us less time. No, Hannah said, her voice suddenly hard and clear. It gives us the right time. She grabbed the microphone. Harbor Nest, move now. Marker 7, low drift, no wake. They are coming out on the falling water. On the main screen, the recovery boats shifted course. The room held its breath as 2 small blue icons slid toward the narrow inlet. No one laughed at Hannah Walker now. No one saw a courier. No one saw a quiet woman with a strange badge and a wet uniform. They saw the one person in the room who had heard 6 people calling from the dark before anyone else knew how to listen. The 2 blue icons moved across the main screen so slowly that the entire war room seemed to lean forward to push them. Rain distorted the offshore feed into gray streaks, but the passive drone above cloud cover kept the coastline visible enough for Hannah to track the inlet by shape instead of brightness. She stood with one hand on the edge of the table, eyes steady, counting the seconds without looking at the clock. Commander Cole stood beside her, silent now, his earlier certainty replaced by something more useful. Attention. Depth reading, Hannah said. Lieutenant Price answered immediately. 3 feet, 9 inches and dropping. Boat 1 enters on the next swell. Boat 2 holds south and mirrors the drift. Price relayed the order. On the speaker, the response came back beneath wind and static. Boat 1 moving. No lights. Low engine. The icon slipped into the narrow channel. For a moment, nothing happened. No signal. No voice. No confirmation. Major Reeves gripped the back of his chair. Chief Mercer kept his headset pressed tight to one ear, his face unreadable. Cole glanced at Hannah. She was not calm because the moment was easy. She was calm because fear had no authority over the work. Then 3 faint taps came through the speaker. Pause. 1 tap. Price looked up. Contact pattern? Hannah nodded once. They see the boat. The room released a breath it had been holding too long. Seconds later, the speaker cracked again. Norfolk, this is boat 1. Visual on first shadow. Repeat, visual on first shadow. No one cheered. Not yet. Hannah raised one hand slightly, keeping the room locked in discipline. Confirm count by touch only. No names over open air. The boat operator replied, copy. Touch count only. The next minutes moved with the slow pressure of a closing door. 1 shadow became 2. 2 became 4. The tide kept falling. The margin kept shrinking. Price called numbers in a low voice. 3 feet, 7 inches. 3 feet, 6 inches. Reeves adjusted the satellite delay, his earlier skepticism gone, replaced by concentration so complete he barely blinked. Cole watched the inlet icon, then the list from the envelope, then Hannah's face. Every name on that page was becoming a person again. Boat 1 reports 5, Price said. The room tightened. Hannah's gaze did not leave the screen. Hold position. Cole's voice was low. They are missing one. I know. Static filled the speaker. Rain hissed against the base far above them. The blue icon drifted a few yards inside the channel. Too far, and it could lose depth. Too little, and it could lose the last man. Then, beneath the static, came 2 clicks. Pause. 2 clicks. Pause. 1 click. The same pattern as before, weaker this time. Chief Mercer's hand closed over the edge of the console. Hannah leaned toward the microphone. Boat 1, final shadow is upstream of your bow. Right side, 12 yards. Do not advance. Let the water bring him to you. Cole looked at her, startled by the precision. How can you know that? Hannah's eyes stayed on the screen. Because Raven 1 always signals from cover. The words were barely spoken, but they carried history. Boat 1 waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then the speaker came alive. Touch count 6. Repeat, touch count 6. All 6 aboard. For one suspended moment, the room did not understand relief. It arrived too large, too quiet, too sacred to become noise. Price lowered his head. Reeves turned away and wiped at his eyes before anyone could see. Chief Mercer stood perfectly still, his lips pressed together, the old memory finally meeting the present without breaking him. Cole looked at Hannah Walker as if the room had just finished teaching him the lesson he should have learned before she entered. Hannah did not smile. She only closed the folder, placed her palm over the open list of names, and said, "Bring them home." This time, every officer in the room moved before the order finished leaving her mouth. The recovery boats cleared the inlet with 11 inches of water beneath their hulls, and less than 4 minutes before the tide made the route useless again. On the main screen, the blue icons moved away from the coast and toward the waiting offshore vessel. No one in the war room celebrated loudly. The moment was too close to becoming memory, and every person there seemed to understand that noise would cheapen it. Lieutenant Price kept one hand over his headset, listening until the confirmation came through. Harbor Nest reports all 6 transferred. Medical team has them. Conditions stable. Returning to safe water. The words reached the room like sunlight entering a place that had forgotten morning existed. Major Reeves sat back slowly, his face pale with exhaustion and relief. Chief Mercer removed his headset and held it in both hands, staring at the screen as if the 6 small status lights were names carved into something permanent. Commander Travis Cole stood beside Hannah Walker without speaking. The opened envelope lay on the table between them, its red seal broken, its pages spread beneath the glow of the overhead lights. Minutes earlier, men had laughed at that envelope. Now no one touched it without care. Hannah watched until the final blue icon crossed the boundary line into friendly water. Only then did she let her hand fall from the table. The room seemed to breathe again. Cole looked at the list, then at her badge, then at her face. "Lieutenant Commander," he said quietly. She turned to him. He straightened to full height, shoulders squared, pride no longer loud but disciplined. "I was wrong." The room heard it. He meant for them to hear it. Hannah studied him for a moment, not searching for weakness, only truth. "Then be right next time," she said. There was no cruelty in it. That made it land harder. Cole nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." Chief Mercer stepped forward, and this time he did not hide what he knew. He stood before Hannah, brought his hand up, and saluted. Not because a paper told him to, not because rank required it, because some debts were carried in silence until the right person came back into the room. One by one, the others followed. Price first, then Reeves, then the communications team. Finally Cole. Hannah returned the salute with the same quiet precision she had carried from the moment she arrived. No smile, no speech, no victory pose, just a soldier acknowledging soldiers. The storm outside began to soften against the concrete above them. On the screen, Harbor Nest sent one final message. 6 recovered. Route successful, returning home. Hannah picked up the pages and slid them back into the envelope, though the seal could never be made whole again. That seemed fitting. Some truths, once opened, were not meant to be hidden twice. As she turned to leave, Cole spoke again. "Walker." She paused near the steel door. "The men out there," he said, looking at the screen, "they knew you would hear them." Hannah looked back at the red marker that was no longer a warning, only a place on a map where judgment had nearly failed and discipline had not. They knew someone would listen, she said. Then she walked out into the corridor, the silver-white wolf badge catching one last flash of blue light before the door closed behind her. Inside the war room, no one spoke for a long moment. The empty space she left behind felt larger than the room itself. Commander Cole looked at the chair at the head of the table, the one he had defended before he understood what command really cost. Respect had not arrived with volume. It had not arrived with rank alone. It had arrived quietly, in a rain-dark uniform, carrying a sealed envelope everyone mocked until the names inside reminded them what honor looked like when it refused to explain itself.